One.
Welcome to the Daily Objective. We have what some people might say we do too much of, which is an episode where we celebrate ourselves. Today,
It's not one of these. It's not one of these.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to get to. So it is a celebration. It's a different type of celebration. You know, it's not going to be the usual telethon style, you know, where we have every objectivist celebrity on the planet coming and, you know, on for 5 minutes and telling us how great we are, although I love that. And of course, it is going to be telethon style in the sense that we will ask you for your support as we always do. But we have a few features of this episode. So some of the things that are coming up in the next it's going to be much shorter than, or not much, but it's going to be shorter than previous celebrations. It's going to be maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. We will have a something like that.
An hour and a half.
Let's see, because we have at the end of the episode, the last 30 minutes or so, we have the trial of the century, which we'll find out what exactly that means when we get to it. But yeah, I know this is somebody that many people have wanted to put on trial for a long time. So it's finally we're doing it here.
I'll call it the trial of the month to keep the expectations reasonable, and we'll see if it becomes of the century. But it's definitely the trial of the month. Yes,
and we do have to say it's technically a mock trial. We don't have any actual legal power yet, but it will be a lot of fun, I think, for everybody. So we'll have that. Before that, we'll have a huge announcement on the future of ARCUK programming. Yeah, well, that's coming. I'm not gonna try any clues on what that might be. You'll see. I think it's a very big one. I think it's a good one.
Could it be that Razi hired Ben Shapiro?
No, I don't think well, you know, if he wants to come work here as a volunteer, we will have him on, but we'll see.
So it's not that. Okay.
Not yet, but we will be discussing something Ben Shapiro related. So and yeah, we'll have some people joining us. We as I mentioned, it's not going to be a telethon style show, but we'll have it's not just going to be Nikos and myself, but it was I think April 2020 when I called Nikos and I said, you know, we shout at each other on the phone for like 20 minutes a day about various things. Let's make a show on YouTube of that, like a daily show. And Nikos's reply was, "This is the worst idea I have ever heard in my life." And it was exactly in that perfect Greek accent as you just heard me repeat. And so the fact that we are today exactly 3 years from the day of the first ever Daily Objective, I think is a very big achievement. It's definitely a reason to celebrate. And we're going to start the celebration by having a 20-minute, I don't know if we're going to shout at each other, but a 20-minute episode of Nikos and myself talking about the controversial documentary, What is a Woman, which was available for free over the weekend on Twitter. I don't know if it's still available, but yeah, I mean, this was it made a lot of noise when it came out, and now that everybody saw it because it's free, it made even more noise. So
millions of people viewed it during the weekend, so we both watched it, and we have a different take on it. One of us liked it, the other was wasn't very impressed. But anyway, you're the boss. So yeah, 3 years, how different things were. We were towards the end of the first wave of COVID. It was the time of the riots, of the Black Lives Matter protests. It was the time when we were hoping for a vaccine, and Trump was the best person on earth, according to conservatives, because he would bring us a vaccine fast enough. How different the world was. I had a haircut. I cut my own hair and my own beard, and I was in quarantine in Athens because back then, if you had to travel from the UK to Athens, you then had to quarantine by yourself for 14 days somewhere alone. So I was in a friend's Airbnb alone. At one point, I went out to throw the rubbish, and I almost felt like I'm doing something very transgressive and something very, very, very daring. So what a different world it was. Anyway, so what is a woman? So what was did you like it?
So yeah, overall, I thought it was, when I finished watching it, I thought it was a good documentary. Now let's put that into context. First of all, I thought it was really bad when I started watching it because it was mostly making light of the issue, kind of bringing on, the worst possible trans activist, doctors and academics and so on, or were there doctors? Anyway, yeah, and I thought it got better in some ways. Now, I also put this in context that in the context of documentaries are usually really bad and they're usually propaganda, and they're worse propaganda than this was. That being said, and it was something that I got a lot out of and would watch again. So in that sense, I think it was a good documentary. Of course, I think it missed out on a lot. It's clear that Matt Walsh, who made this documentary, identifies a problem but can't really identify why it's a problem. Doesn't have a good grasp of it. At some point towards the end, they actually identified what really is the issue for them, which is the trans movement is kind of comes out of this idea that you should pursue your own happiness. So their problem, yeah, it was the British guy. I don't remember his name, but it was him who mentioned this. So, yeah, and one of the many people who could not answer the question, "What is a woman?" said, the problem here is you're looking for an essentialist definition. And this is one of those moments where I really wanted there to be an objectivist philosopher in the room saying, yes, essentialist, that is what a definition is. So yes, this is my overall take. I'm glad I watched it. Didn't feel like I wasted my time. But yeah, I have more criticism, which we can get to later. So
you mentioned the issue that they don't like that the issue is personal happiness, and Ben Shapiro talks about Pride today. I just says in his tweet, he did it 3 hours ago. He says something like, "This was never about tolerance. It was about supplanting a norm of atomized individualism rooted in sexual identity for the old norm." Atomized individualism. So first of all, atomized individualism rooted in sexual identity, this is already a contradiction. How can it be individualism if it's rooted in a particular identity that you have to acquire? So here's why I didn't like the documentary, although you can watch it, it's not boring. So usually when you watch a documentary, after the documentary, you need to know a bit more. So 2 hours after you watch a documentary, you should know more than you knew 2 hours before you watched the documentary. That's the one case, or you get some insights that you didn't have. Did we learn anything new during that documentary? The answer is no. So what was lacking for me was some genuine curiosity from the side of Matt Walsh on understanding what is happening there. So we learned that postmodernist, or however you want to call them, critical theorists, cultural SJWs, however you want to call them, we knew already that they're not very big on the issue of definitions. We already knew that. We already knew that the way they understand the notion of woman is different from the way conservatives understand it. Again, we didn't learn anything particularly new. What would be potentially interesting is when they talked about the science behind some drugs and the science behind sexual, the procedures to change to have this operation and these procedures to change your gender. Okay, I'll use this. I'm not sure if I use the terms rightly. But here's the thing, that's the part about facts and data. I think that's where the documentary fails, because it doesn't still ban any side. It says, oh, there's this research that shows that at some point after you take the hormones, you might get cancer, or it provided some cases of people who regret going through these operations. But the question is, how many of them regret it? What's the percentage? Why don't we also hear from the other side? So this was some pondering, I think, to the one side of the culture wars. Some pondering that doesn't really shed light to what is happening here. It's a very difficult topic. It's a very sensitive topic. And what we need is a better understanding, not pondering and not like gotcha moments. And also there were some moments in the documentary that he was unfair to the people he was interviewing. If you do some research, for example, the person who was apparently considered being a wolf, she wrote a piece saying, I never said that I think I'm a wolf. Obviously, I'm not a wolf. This was like a how to put it, a spiritual kind of connection I have to nature. And we can say, that's not my style. I think this is stupid, whatever. But this is completely different from saying, I'm not really a human being, I'm a wolf. So you know what? I didn't become wiser. Therefore, I don't think there's much to see there.
All right. Yeah. I mean, so with the science stuff, yeah, we don't know about it. So we're, not going to talk about it. And that's advice that maybe conservatives should also take. If you don't know something, you can say that you don't know something. But the bottom line for me is I agree with, Matt Walsh's answer to the question that is the title of the documentary. And I think that's, unfortunately, is something that is becoming more and more controversial, especially, semi-rational people will not accept that, you can identify as one gender in the morning and you change it in the afternoon. And, there's all these, there's this wide range of things that you could make up. There's a different question when it comes to actual, operations that physically alter, your body. So yeah, and I am on the side of even that does not actually change. There are things that you cannot change about yourself, and this is one of them. So I think, was this the best possible documentary you could make on this topic? Absolutely not. But I think it might be the best that has been made, just because I don't know how many have been made, and
I don't know. But let me say something, a meta thought, which also shows how the daily objective was really important for me. Remember, around a year ago, we did an episode with a guy we called an honest critic of Ayn Rand. So this guy is, let's say, a leftist, closer to class, a left liberal, so to speak. Anyway, after that episode, we had like we have a civilized relationship on Twitter. So after I watched the documentary, I asked him, hey, can you send me some, if it's not a problem on your time, can you send me some good sources that criticize the documentary from the other side? And the guy did, and I feel so thankful that he put all this time on that. But here's the interesting thing. Sometimes we worry, we objectivists, that if we say, look, there's some truth in both sides, we will be criticized as being middle of the roaders, as being relativist. But sometimes when you read some good stuff on a position that you have never yourself considered, you see, you know what, there is something there. So reading criticism about Matt Walsh's documentary, I saw that not everyone on the side that is very vocal, let's say, about transgender issues, not everyone is a fanatic that wants to destroy Western civilization or whatever the caricature is. So again, my take on this is these are very difficult topics, and there needs to be a lot of study, work, and introspection in your own mind to figure out how to approach them. And the problem is that this is exactly the thought that is missing. We already know that the one side, the so-called social justice warriors, there's plenty of intolerance there, there's plenty of fanaticism. But actually, if you think about it, part of their defensiveness is that, well, the other side doesn't understand us, and the other side completely mischaracterizes what we believe. So it turns out you spend 5 minutes on the literature within the transgender movement, you see that there's no one there who says, yeah, of course of course we understand. There's no one there who says there is not such a thing as a biological man. Obviously, they understand that there's such a thing as, quote, I don't know how to put it, biological penis. And if you have a biological penis, you're a biological male. So this made me think that I will never talk about a topic if I don't steelman the other side, if I don't steelman both sides. So I want to see the best arguments from both sides, and then I will draw a conclusion. And again, I don't think that Walsh is doing that. It's like when people criticize Ayn Rand and they take one quote and completely out of context throw it there, and they say this is Ayn Rand. No, you want to understand Ayn Rand, you need to do some good work and at least read something from Ayn Rand herself, from Peikoff, or from Dr. Gatte, or from people who really can understand. So this is what would be more useful rather than saying, oh, they are groomers and whatever is the latest meme in the conservative sphere.
Yeah, so he definitely didn't steelman the other side, which is why, as I mentioned, the beginning of the documentary, I was not impressed. But then I wonder if he steelman his own side, because when he finally starts talking to people who are on the right side of the issue, he goes to an African tribe. This is, and by the way, he tweeted that this was his favorite part of the documentary. He goes to an African tribe where people have the correct approach to this. Now, I agree with them on this particular issue, but if you ask me, where would I rather live? In an African tribe where people understand the difference between a man and a woman, or in New York City, where some people might not, but it's the greatest place on earth, in my opinion. It's not a difficult choice. I'll still take the West with whatever things I disagree with, including the trans movement and including the conservative movement.
But the interesting thing is, I think a conservative today would feel at home with these pre-modern civilizations because they share a lot. They think that truth comes from revelation. But let me take it a step further, because notice the Messiah at some point told something like, this is how God wants it. And this is also Matt Walsh's better argument, that this is how God wants it. And notice also something else. Conservatives yap about postmodernists don't like definitions. Ask a conservative what is freedom, and you'll be very surprised that you will not get any definition. Remember when Ron DeSantis told us that freedom means that we have to coerce private restaurants, cafeterias, to accept you, whether they want it or not, irrespective of your vaccine status. Now, if there was a cafeteria that still would require vaccine passports, I wouldn't go to that cafeteria. But this is completely different from the government telling them, no, shut up and accept everyone, because otherwise you infringe their freedom. So conservatives understand freedom as well as the people that Matt Walsh understand what is a woman. So the conservatives don't only share with the tribes, they also share a lot more than they want to admit with postmodernists, or however they want to call that.
True. Do you want to get to the super chats? I think we have.
I want, but I can't because I can't see them. So it's on you.
Oh, I was hoping it would be on you, but all right. So we had $2, I guess, from Robert Naser. I think he said celebrate. I can't see it now, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it before. Kathleen with £3. Happy 3rd birthday, TDO. Jonathan, Roland, Robert Naser, Bonnie, Mary Aline. I'm not going to read all of them because there are a lot and we really appreciate it. Nick, Walter sends €20. Thank you, Walter. Says celebrations and felicitations. Mary Aline, free trade. Mary Aline, free trade says, how fortunate that we have now abolished all that government coercion that led to shutting down the entire world because of a bad flu strain.
Have we?
Mary Aline, Kirk, Robert Naser says, Matt Walsh has the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns into a muffler. Jonathan, and yeah, that's it for now. Thank you everybody for your super chats today and over the past not 3 years, but it's because we weren't monetized yet when we started the Daily Objective. So, but we were monetized in November of 2020, and that has been very helpful over the past 2.5 years.
As a transition to the next part, do you want to? Do you want us to throw around some stories that the audience might not know as like spice to the episode?
Yeah, at some point we were gonna tell people who might not know about those episodes that got tens of thousands of views, right? Should we leave that for later? That's
That's not the most interesting story.
Well,
but anyway.
it's a story. It's yeah, okay, we can leave that. Do you want to go? Do you have a story you want to tell? And at some point in between those stories, we will have a very, very big announcement.
Okay. So do you want to tell a sad story or a happy story?
We have sad stories?
No, I mean the behind the scenes drama that happens from time to time with you and me.
We can go. I mean, like I said, the behind the scenes drama was kind of what gave me the idea for a show. Now I'm glad it didn't turn out as the original idea was, which was, by the way, I think I said let's do it 7 days a week, right? That was my original idea. 7 days a week and just the two of us. So I'm glad we kind of changed it as we went along. But yes, go ahead. Tell the sad story.
So how did we end up with? So did you people notice that at some point we ended up with a star lineup with Jonathan and Mark? Do you want to tell people how this came along?
Yes. So, I mean, we had one of our behind the scenes disagreements, let's call it, it's a very mild word for it. And Nikos was very upset with me, and he
and vice versa.
Yeah, but you gave your notice. You said,
not really, but well, yeah, I was like,
well, you said I'm doing one more month of this and that's it. And yeah. I thought, and this was like August of 2020, so the show was really new. And I thought, this is a disaster. Of course, there's no show without Nikos. What am I going to do? And I'm like, okay, so let me try. And I randomly, just not randomly, I mean, I knew who they were, but I messaged both Jonathan Hoenig and Mark Pellegrino, asked them if they can jump on a call, and asked them if they wanted to become regular hosts on the show. And of course, I thought there was very little chance of either of them saying yes. They both ended up saying yes, and I think that's a very, obviously, it's a very big part of the reason why we're still here today.
And the funny thing is that by the time he does that, we figure out our disagreement. So everything it was win, 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 win. Our main disagreement started by having me insisting that we need to have more social media videos. And then from this started some which turned almost personal, but we ended up with social media short clips, with 2 new hosts, and with the Daily Objective being what you later became accustomed to. So even through the dark moments and the bad times, the Daily Objective becomes better. And that's really a true story. We had the fight on how to do the Daily Objective better. And through that fight, through Razi's audacity, because I'm like, okay, there's no chance. If he had asked me before, I'd say there's no chance these people are going to say yes. And yet they said yes. So the takeaway is, when in doubt, ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Jonathan and Mark had been on the show as guests. Now, Jonathan, I knew him. I organized the speaking tour for him in the UK. We toured the UK for a week. So I wasn't surprised when he agreed to be a guest on the show. I was pleasantly surprised when he agreed to be a host. He's also going to be joining us very soon. And Mark. Actually, with Mark had been a guest on the show, and I was surprised that he would even do that. So yeah, The fact that he is now I know we haven't seen much of him recently because he's now in Paris, but he will be back. And the announcement I'm about to make very soon will also be something that he's going to be a part of. So, and yes, the super chat earlier mentioned by Kirk is Kirk Wilcox. I will mention that because so that there's no confusion. We have some other Kirks who we love, but this was Kirk Wilcox.
And
Any
there's
other
a poll going on, I see in the super chat. How would you rate What is a Woman? And at the moment, 1 star and 3 stars are leading. Some people give it 2 stars. No one till now gives it a 4 star. Okay, shall we proceed to the big announcement, or shall we proceed to adding one more guest?
well, I want to make the announcement first, but you can tell another story and kind of tease it along a little bit more.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't remember one. So
actually, maybe I teased something too much, and maybe I should tell the story of the episodes that got tens of thousands of views in case it sounds like more than it actually is. So the Daily Objective in the early days was live on Facebook Live. And of course, Gloria Alvarez was one of the first regular hosts. And, so she has an audience and she would share those episodes, but also Facebook works in mysterious ways. And on Facebook, if you're scrolling through Facebook and you stop for 3 seconds because, the cat fell off the counter or something, that counts as a view. So yeah, I don't know how many of those tens of thousands of people. I think one episode, I think it was the one where we had either Johan Norberg or what's his name, the famous British intellectual whose name I'm forgetting.
Douglas Carswell.
No, Matt.
Matt Ridley. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was one of those episodes that got over 30,000 views. But again, it was 30,000 Facebook views, and Facebook was tough. There were times when we didn't manage to go live, and then sometimes and we would then upload the episodes later to YouTube. So there were times when we couldn't go live. We at some point started doing those episodes on YouTube instead, and then we realized YouTube is a video platform. It's nice to see tens of thousands of views, and hopefully we'll see them again in the future. But we'd rather see fewer views but have the shows easier to watch and easier to actually produce.
So what they say is that in the beginning, doesn't matter how good or bad you are, because no one is watching anyway. So in our way, it was the opposite, if you look at the numbers. But again, these numbers are not organic, and these were not, let's say, loyal viewership. So the numbers that we achieved later in the year and in year 2 and year 3 are closer to the truth, and we hope that we are becoming better. Just to know that we never show up and just throw stuff to you. There's always preparation. So just for What is a Woman, there's a lot of notes. So we always appreciate your time. And my policy is, if we don't know what we're talking about, we don't talk about it. So we don't take your time for granted. We know, as our friend Don Watkins says, when you create content, you compete with everything, including people eating a sandwich, watching Netflix, and having sex. So we understand how all these activities are important, and we really appreciate that for this half an hour every day, you honor your time with the Daily Objective. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and speaking of Don Watkins, so he had an idea. I think he had an idea for one episode, like a year and a half ago, where I'm trying to remember what the topic was, but there were like 5 or 6 people, and it was what book would you write, or what 5 most important books that have never been written. I don't remember exactly what the topic was, but it was a really fun episode. And then he suggested, based on that we do once a week, we have this show where we have a bunch of people, 5 or so people, hanging out, and it's kind of like, it is kind of like we're hanging out. It's not one topic. So we try to do a few topics at a time. It's it's less formal than the other shows, and that is what became the Thursday Collective. Now, since then, there were times when I think for a while we didn't do the Thursday Collective, then we brought it back. And about a month or two ago, I was watching the Thursday Collective, and I thought, I was sitting here in the office, I was watching it, and I thought, wow, this is such a great show. And it's different from the Daily Objective, very different. I mean, on the Daily Objective, you have Nikos doing a deep dive into a topic, or Jonathan doing a deep dive, or a one-on-one. It's always, there's always one topic, and it's a great idea for a show. But so is the idea of having 5-6 people talking about several topics, in kind of a lighter atmosphere. It also, there's a flexibility to it that we don't have with the Daily Objective. So from July 24th, the Thursday Collective will become the Daily Collective. The Daily Objective isn't going anywhere, so we will have 2 shows a day. Some days we will have more than 2 shows. We will have 2 daily shows. The Daily Objective will move to 5:30 p.m. UK time, so 12:30 Eastern and 9:30 Pacific. It'll be a 30-minute show, more or less, well, not more, probably a little bit less. And then at 6 p.m. UK time, 1 Eastern, we will have the Daily Collective. That'll run for about an hour. We will have the people you know and love who are on the Daily Objective and on the Daily Collective. They will be there, not every day. I don't think anybody will be on the show 5 times a week, but we'll have a big roster of people who interesting people. Some of them will be new people who will be on the show on a daily basis. And again, like with the flexibility that it gives us. So I think in the history of the Daily Objective, there's maybe once or twice where like half an hour before a show, there's a big news story and we're like, forget what we were planning to do, let's do this news story. But it's very difficult to do with the Daily Objective. With the Collective, we can do that literally if in the middle of a show, a big news story comes in. We can add that to the panel. The panel can talk about it. One of the things about these panels is if there's 5 people and there's a topic that one of the people doesn't know, is uncomfortable talking about, you can skip them and you still have enough people commenting about it. So yeah, I love the show, and that's why we're doing this. I hope other people, I see some people in the chat are happy about it, so that's good. And yeah.
Oh, so sorry, finish.
Well, I'm just saying I'm really looking forward to it. I know it's going to mean a lot more work for us behind the scenes, but it'll be fun.
So I haven't rehearsed this with Razi. I'm just thinking out loud. So this will require a lot more work, but here's how, if the audience gets value of it, there are all the ways how you can help, but here's what comes to my mind. So recently, Razi has started something which is called the sponsoring a show. Now, it's not just about the sponsoring, but helping us with topics that you would want to see us cover is quite a boost to what we do, because we do the topics because we enjoy them, but also because we hope they can provide some value. So coming up with ideas, sharing these ideas to Razi, even better, sponsoring a show. And again, this show could be a review of a film. I'm talking about the Daily Objective now, like the 30 minutes, the short show. Sponsoring, reviewing a film, reviewing a documentary, reviewing something someone said. So I don't remember what is the current price for sponsoring an episode, but this can help the center in 2 ways. One, it can help us figuring out what's the content that will be of value to you. And also it helps keeping the lights live. So I don't know if Razi wants to talk about this, but from the time the Daily Objective started, how ARCUK operates has changed. And it has moved considerably to being more or less to the self-sufficient side. And I don't know how much Razi wants to say on that, but he's running a lot. He's literally jumping on airplanes, not from airplanes, on airplanes to manage to keep the lights on. And a way for you to help and get value out of this is to sponsor shows that you want to watch. So again, a film, an interview, something someone said, whatever, a book, ask it and it might happen.
Yes, so we did recently start sponsored shows, and many thanks to our sponsors, Emmanuel from the Southern California Objectivist Meetup, Thomas Bisson, and of course Cordair and Cordair Fine Art, who are sponsoring shows regularly. So that is one way. Another way, which we will, in a sense, highlight later in this episode, of course, becoming a member is a great way to support us, because that is an amount of money that we know is coming in every single month. And we will highlight later in this episode a benefit of a specific level, which is the platinum level, which is £50 a month, not cheap by any means. But we are adding perks to that level, one of which, as I mentioned, you'll see soon. And yeah, so become a member, and that is always helpful. And thank you. By the way, there's many super chats, and those are also very helpful. Thank you for that, and thank you, Equal to Reality, for gifting a membership on YouTube. Should we make this a bit of a teaser for the Daily Collective and add James and Jonathan, who are—
You're the boss. Are you asking me?
So we have James Valiant and Jonathan Honig with us. We will be joined by them any second now.
Here, James.
Hey, James.
Howdy.
And Jonathan, I see him, but I don't know if you— well, you can now see him.
Gentlemen.
Hey, congratulations, Simi Tov and Mazel Tov. And no, I'm serious. Congratulations, Razi, to you, your entire team. Nikos, I never really figured out how to pronounce your last name. It's only
Doesn't
been
matter.
Years now. I'm working on it.
Thank you. And again,
Thanks.
Talking about people who have contributed their time, their energy, their expertise. So anyway, we've mentioned this before, but Jonathan has an audience in Fox News. So it's not everyone would do that. Not everyone would come here and to a smaller audience and not be a diva and saying, "Oh, I'm in Fox News. Why do I need to go to this small program?" Like James is doing his own work, his scholar work, and yet he gives his time. He comes here in the difficult topics, in topics that we need some extra intellectual help. So I want both of you to know that this is highly appreciated, and I never take your time for granted.
Well, it's been my pleasure and my privilege to work with you guys. There may be things that I say later on in this show that are going to contradict what I'm about to say here. But I think you guys are doing some of the most important work in the world. And I can think of no more important a value than having this conversation where we discuss Ayn Rand's ideas and apply them to the news of the day, apply them to cultural events that are happening all around us. And of course, we're going to have disagreements. And of course, you guys are going to, you two are a classic example, yelling at each other, of course, just metaphorically, but showing that there's an ongoing discussion, that there's an ongoing active intellect here that's working with these ideas and applying them and creating a worldwide audience of young students of objectivism. Those kind of things are simply priceless. And you guys are doing stuff. If the civilization has a future, you guys are instrumental to that future. I really believe that. So thank you guys.
That's highly appreciated.
Yeah,
So,
and by the way, Nikos, we told the story of how Jonathan became a regular feature on the Daily Objective. Should we tell the story of how we what happened when we asked James, why we asked James to join for our Saturday sessions on Peacock? Do you remember?
I don't remember this at all. So you
Actually,
can...
I'm thinking so many of the great things that happen here are because you and I fight. So this was another. This was actually, it wasn't you and me. It was mostly. So we have our members know we have sessions. Nowadays they're on Sundays, but they used to be on Saturdays on Peikoff's courses. And in the past, it was they were run by Nikos, and
they were run, not taught, because I cannot teach obviously Peikoff courses. I was just facilitating.
But you were a great facilitator, and there was a discussion on.
Are you talking about the UFO incident?
Yes.
I was telling the story to a friend the other day. So here's what happened.
It wasn't UFO.
Yeah, we were on the class where Peikoff talks about the possible, the probable, and the arbitrary. And every week I was trying to find light questions that would go to the essence of their philosophy. So I put 10 questions, and one of them was, there is life in other planets. Is this possible, probable, or arbitrary? I thought back then that the answer is arbitrary. Weirdly enough, Razi agreed. And yet, it started a fight, not an intellectual fight, not between me and Razi, weirdly, but between Razi and other members of the community. So is this how we brought James in? I didn't remember that.
Yes, I was very upset that anybody would put it in any category other than arbitrary. And you know, I tried to figure out how that could be. And I spoke to several people, but I spoke to James. By the way, James and I still disagree on this. But it was clear, you know, James's understanding of objectivism is far deeper than mine or yours, and it was clear that this would be that this is needed. Of course, I was too upset at the time. I don't think it just should have started a fight, but yeah, it was a very interesting topic that then came up again in future discussions.
Right.
You know, say the fact that you guys get upset about an issue like that is, do we classify this as arbitrary or barely possible? What is the exact epistemological status of life on other planets given our state of knowledge? Wow, the fact that you guys can even get worked up about it, a subject like that, I think speaks volumes to how philosophical and thoughtful you guys really are, and how much you care about ideas and know that ideas matter. And that is one of the great things that distinguishes a student of Ayn Rand and objectivism from the rest of the common herd out there. It's as if
we don't get things always right, but we take things always seriously. Anyway, to go back to the earlier stuff, shall we ask?
Briefly to say that, I mean, the fact that ARCUK offers this programming specifically dedicated to Dr. Peikoff, taught by James, who has studied with Dr. Peikoff. I mean, a lot of people come to Ayn Rand and they don't even know, wait, Leonard Peikoff, what is this? So, you know, having learned so much from Dr. Peikoff myself, the fact that you facilitate this educational experience for your members, for your subscribers, for our YouTube viewers. I mean, they get so much out of reading Dr. Peikoff, hearing from him for the first time, James, with you as a co-teacher along the way.
Okay.
Well, having studied with Dr. Peikoff, I kind of feel a responsibility. I mean, Lord knows how many times he corrected me when I had a misunderstanding, and I have to assume that sometimes there'll be a person out there who'll have the same misunderstanding that I did and would appreciate the same kind of correction that Dr. Peikoff gave me. And I kind of feel a responsibility to carry that on and to pass that knowledge along insofar as I'm able.
Speaking of Dr. Peikoff, we've had him in the show, not in the show, but in the channel twice. And also, Razi, shall we also reveal what happened when you traveled in the US?
Well, one of those 2 times was on the Daily Objective. So yes, he has been on the Daily Objective.
And shall we reveal what happened in the US one day?
I mean, you already revealed it in a sense, but yes, I have spoken about it. So.
Oh, you've spoken. Okay. Yeah. So Razi had actually met Dr. Peikoff, and I think that's a great testament to, you know, the work he's doing. Okay, Razi, is this the point where you leave and where we stay, the three of us, till you bring up?
No, wait. First of all, don't say what I'm bringing or whoever or whatever it was you were about to say.
So there's still the biggest part of the program. Before we get there, Sarah introduce the new thing that we're bringing, for which today's thing will be a teaser, or shall we ask Jonathan and James if they've watched What is a Woman?
So before we get to the part that we're not getting to yet, I have to say this is beyond my control because it depends on when it arrives here. Okay, so the two people on the chat have already said probable, one of them in a super chat. So you're not going to get me started on this. Yes, Nikos.
But let me just say, we went to James and we also went to a senior, another senior objectivist intellectual that we very much respect. And their answer was more on the possible, somewhere between the possible and the probable.
Who said anything between possible and probable? I spoke to several, and I've spoken since. This is a question I now ask objectivist intellectuals when I talk to them. I don't remember. Most have said possible. I don't remember anybody saying probable.
Okay. Anyway, but I don't. Some said arbitrary. Anyway, let's not. But yeah, if people ask about this. Yeah, very probable, says Roland. I don't think anyone says. Marilyn, I think the majority said the answer is possible. My answer would be possible now, although back then I'd say arbitrary, but I wouldn't know how to justify it. So,
well, I'm much more confident about what is a woman rather than what's life on other planets.
Okay, so let's get to that. Did you watch it, Jonathan?
I didn't see the film, but I want to briefly just to say a few things about the channel writ large. You mentioned Dr. Peikoff's appearances, but hats off, and people should take advantage of the library of 700, almost 800 shows that we've produced. I mean, you've tackled topics like homosexuality and objectivism, the Atlas Society and factionism within objectivism. One of my favorite episodes was the one where I discussed Wall Street. Nikos, I believe with you, we dissected the movie Wall Street.
Yeah.
We've talked about art. We've talked about aesthetics. Robert Nasir's gone on to all different types of things. So, I mean, we've really not only kind of explored all these different avenues within objectivism, but done it as, I think we'd all agree, just ardent students. And again, hats off. You've created this community. I always like to remind people that it wasn't too long ago, Christopher Smith in our chat said, objectivism's new. And I mean, James, you remember, and we all do, it's like people used to pass around tapes of Miss Rand, send around records, and you'd come to someone's house for a listening party. And we've created this global community of people learning about objectivism, all different levels, being inspired to pick up Miss Rand, listen to a Peikoff podcast, check out the Daily Objective, and start integrating these ideas and thinking about these ideas. So it's something so new, and I love and I get so much out selfishly out of being part of it. So thank you to you, and mostly even thank you to our global community around the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Wall Street episode.
People throw the term community these days easily, but turns out it is actually a community, and this became clear to me in two occasions. The first occasion was the marriage of actually one of the prominent ARCUK members. Actually, it's out there on the internet, so it's not even a secret. The marriage of the boss, and how people came from all over the world, from all over the community to honor the occasion. And that was one incident that proves that this is indeed a community. The other thing was the birthday of ARCUK in Edinburgh this year. And I usually don't like festive occasions and stuff, so I was like, I don't want to come. Anyway, Razi persuaded me to come. Actually, we had a very, very good time. We learned. So it was the usual stuff with ARCUK. You learn and you have a good time. So when Jonathan says this is a community, this is not one of these cliches, we're a community. No, it's actually a community. We've met interesting people. We've learned stuff about areas that we are not experts, but other people are experts. So this is something that makes ARCUK actual a community.
Yeah, and the episode Jonathan mentioned about Wall Street. So I think there were 2 episodes of the Daily Objective about the movie Wall Street, right? Am I?
I remember one. Oh, no, the other was on Greed is Good. The one was on Greed is Good, the slogan. The other one was on Wall Street, the whole movie.
Well, with the one about the whole movie, we tweeted about it, and Oliver Stone liked the tweet.
Oh, yeah.
It made me immediately think he didn't watch the episode. But yeah, maybe the third episode about Wall Street will feature Oliver Stone himself. And Daniel just messaged us here reminding us that we have over 2,000 videos, more than any other objectivist organization on YouTube. We produce more content than all other objectivist organizations combined. And I think that's true even if you stretch the definition of objectivism beyond where we would stretch it. And that's before we launch another daily show, which would just increase that number by a lot.
Again, people, launching a new show is difficult. So again, we would really appreciate your input in this and your support. And a way to support is not only to become a member and or to sponsor an episode, which is also an easier way for us to come up with the answer to the question, what is the content that is valuable to our audience?
Well, and I'm just going to say this idea of getting some access. I mean, we're offering people a trade. It's not, oh, please take pity on us. Oh, like, we're offering you access to people like, oh, I don't know, James Valiant. I mean, Dr. Binswanger has a show on this channel. So you get so much out of this. You get an interface with Bonnie Bertrand and all of our members on YouTube and whatnot, and interface and ask questions. So, I mean, you get so much out of being that regular supporter. So if it's £5 a month or £10 a month, you're spending more on Netflix. So make us part of your media diet and get more out of your exploration of Ayn Rand. I mean, we still haven't learned, is it Robert Nasir or Nasir? But maybe in year 3 or 4, we'll finally discover that all-important philosophic fact.
Doing and it is for our subscribers. And so I want to really encourage people to become subscribers. We, on the weekends, do go in depth on Leonard Peikoff courses. We've covered the art of thinking, objectivism through induction, physics and philosophy in induction. We're currently doing the history of philosophy, and these discussions are really. I do hope that they provide a value to everyone who's part of the. And we seem to go pretty deep, and we get in some pretty technical issues. And if y'all are there, you can participate. You can ask questions. You can ask what's on your mind. And as Jonathan says, I get a huge value out of it myself, even though I'm leading the discussion. I am constantly learning as I do the preparation for it. I'm constantly having to go around and do the spiral on some concept here because someone's asking that question. And we may not always have the authoritative answer. And we never claim that we have the authoritative answer, but at least we are engaged in the discussion itself. As Jonathan says, we're students of objectivism. We don't claim to be Ayn Rand. We don't claim to be Leonard Peikoff. I'm certainly neither. And I'm certainly still learning. But if you guys want to participate in a really in-depth, meaningful discussion and ask your own questions, everyone's different. Everyone's got areas where they're more confident about, areas where they're still fuzzy about in objectivism. You can bring your questions to the table. And getting the private feedback that I have from the participants in this has really opened my eyes to the value that we're providing. So that if you guys have questions, if you guys want to further your study of objectivism, I can think of nothing better than to become a paid subscriber. All of that content that we've done on these Peikoff courses is available if you become a paid subscriber, and you can check it out and you can participate in the courses that we're actually covering. So I want to second, third, and fourth the motion there. Please do become a subscriber to Ayn Rand Center UK. You can actually participate in real, ask your questions and participate in real philosophically meaty conversations about objectivism. I'm not sure there's any other place you can do that. I know of no other outlet on the internet where that can actually transpire.
Yeah,
so this is value.
There is, as you mentioned, there's over 2 years of content of those Peikoff courses and over 2 years of content of our book club as well. which is also open to everybody who's a member at any level. And as you go higher on the levels, you get more. It costs more, but you get more, and we are constantly adding to those levels. And I mentioned the platinum level. At the platinum level now, you get a course taught by Joseph Tebenkin, the history of astronomy, which is based on the curriculum that they use in Van Damme Academy. So that should be interesting. It's being adapted to to adults. We're going to have
Razi, I'll just jump in real quick. And Mary Leen, who is such a great supporter of ours for so long, says that James's discussions are really good. She can't get up. She wants to get up, but she can't get up at 7:30 a.m. on Sunday morning, but she wants to. And I agree. I mean, James and the Jim Valiant and Nikos, we always say you're like the professors we always wish we had in college. So to be able to study with you even after the fact, not in real time, it's a real treat.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you. I'm not a professor, but here's a proof of concept on why there's so good material. So when I have to prepare for a podcast or for a talk or for an article and topic, what I usually do is I go in ARCUK channel and find what people who really understand objectives deeply say about the topic. So recently, for example, I had to do something on Israel. So I went there and I checked stuff by Yaron and by my colleague Elan Journo. There have been times where for specific topics, and particularly for essays of Ayn Rand, my go-to is first I go to ARI campus to read the essay. My second stop is I go to the channel and I find the discussion that James did, sometimes with Alejandro, sometimes with Don, sometimes with myself. So James' commentary on the essays is gold. So I'm so proud that ARCUK is now part of my journey when I go online to say, hey, where's the good stuff for people who know about Ayn Rand? Okay, yeah. Razi.
Wait, just one more comment. So on those, the fact that it's at 7:30 Pacific, in the morning on a Sunday is not great. And if we haven't shown our appreciation for James enough, the fact that he is on that in that time zone. So he's usually in church at that hour.
That is my church, Jonathan. That is my church.
Yeah, the problem is we don't know where to fit all this content. We have our book club, which is on Tuesdays, but most of this is kind of because it's Zoom calls and it's interactive, unlike the YouTube channel. It's a different experience if you're there live and if you're not there live. But yes, now we have that. We have the history of astronomy on Saturdays. When that's over, Jim Brown is going to do a course on money creation and its consequences. Then we will have a course on grammar. That's all in the platinum level and above. So, but yes.
And I haven't even mentioned this to Razi yet. But if he wants, at some point, I might do a course on how to prepare a talk from the time you know the topic to the time you're on stage and deliver. How to prepare a talk, obviously without notes. You just get up and you give a big talk. So I can't promise when it's going to happen, but at some point we can do this as well.
So that's another reason to join.
Nikos, I have to say, I'm sorry, gentlemen. Nikos, having you and having someone like Don Watkins teaching about communication is itself a huge value-added thing. The actual art of communication is something that we've covered so well in terms of people like you and Don Watkins, who are really expert communicators, and I deeply appreciate the work in that respect.
Thank you. I really appreciate this comment. Okay, let's acknowledge some super chats and then let's go towards the big announcement. Roland says, life in other planets. I'd say very probable. I'd say possible to probable. Is God impossible or arbitrary or both? That's a question for the philosophers. I would say arbitrary, but thank you, equal to reality, for your contribution. Many thanks, Catherine, for your kind words and for your contribution. And Robert says it's nay, sir, but he would also answer to your highness. Okay, Razi.
There's no big announcement. We've already made the big announcement. There's the trial of the century, but we can't do that just yet.
Not the trial, but what is a perk related to that that platinum members can get?
Okay, let's do that now. Although I was gonna do it right before the trial, which I don't know when exactly we can start that. That depends on outside forces. Force majeure is the legal term, I believe.
AKA, I couldn't help it, Mr. Reardon.
Yes.
Okay, then let me fill in this blank airtime with another very short story. So James mentioned earlier shouting to each other. Let me reveal something. Razi has never shouted to me or to anyone, ever. I've shouted to Razi once, which was the second time we had a fight. It was around January 6th. And in retrospect, I was wrong. So in this relationship, there's one time where harsh words were exchanged, and actually there was not exchanged. It was me throwing them to Razi, and it was a time where I disappeared from the channel for something like 25 days. It was again around January 6th, and it was about how we had different interpretations of the event and how serious or not serious it was. But again, with time, we smoothed each other, love prevailed. And actually, in retrospect, I think on that one, I was on the wrong side. So he might look like a rough guy, but Razi actually has never, I haven't heard him raising his voice, whereas he has heard me raise my voice once.
And I just want to say, yeah, Robert, the big announcement was about the collective. The next thing is not an announcement. It's kind of, but it's not the big announcement, no. And it's the daily collective, not the weekly collective. That we already have. But yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll just jump in with one other comment too. People kind of thinking back over the last 3 years. You know, you mentioned, Razi, my first experience with ARCUK wasn't even online. It was, you holding, which I know still goes on, these in-person events all throughout the United Kingdom, aka jolly old England. Razi's out there with Nikos and members of his team, handing out copies of Ayn Rand's books, giving talks to pubs with anywhere from 3 people in them to 50 people in them. So, these guys are out on the front lines evangelizing Ayn Rand and bringing these ideas and turning people on. And, if you've ever had that experience of like just turning someone on to, Ayn Rand and this, it's such a fun activity. So, again, my hat's off to both of you for doing that. And just apropos this idea of creating a community, you've done shows and programming from OCON, from these objectivist events all over the world. So you're kind of creating that community everywhere you go, bringing people and realizing that part of the fun, in my experience of learning objectivism, has been meeting other really interesting people. And far from that idea of everyone is a cult-like automaton. I mean, you guys are always disagreeing about everything. Go to an OCON, you'll find plenty of disagreement over all types of things, but you'll find even more benevolence, joy, and zest for life.
Yeah, I met Jonathan briefly at OCON 2017, and then we met again at OCON 2018, and then you were telling me about a new textbook of Americanism that's coming out, and you said, if I come to England, maybe we can do an event. And I said, what do you mean an event? If you come to England, we do a tour. And yeah, we had you came here for exactly the 5 days, pretty much, that we toured, and we did five cities in those 5 days, and that was a lot of fun. This was the days when I think most people watching now didn't know back then that there is an Ayn Rand Center in the UK. But yeah, this was when everything we did was in person, and Nikos was in at least
in London and in Sheffield. I was thinking that trip to Sheffield with Andy B and Jonathan was on the top 5 of my objectivist memories. Although I traveled from York, you traveled from London, we met at Sheffield, but it was...
We traveled from Liverpool. We were on tour. We traveled from Liverpool.
You traveled from Liverpool, yeah, I traveled from York. This is one of the best memories with Andy B and with Jonathan. Okay, let's get to the other announcement, because I find it's actually exciting. It's one of the please take my money announcements.
And I'll be watching, but I have to check out. Congratulations, guys. Here's to 3 more years.
Thank you for everything, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. And you know what? You two talk for a minute. I'm going to see where we are on what is coming next, and then we can see when we can start that.
Okay, so am I allowed to make the announcement?
No, talk about something else. We have 3 years of stuff to reminisce about, but I want to see if we can. I want the announcement to be, like concretized with what people will get with that.
Okay, so I'll how do you feel airtime? I'll feel it selfishly asking James things I already wanted to ask him. Okay, so James, so how do you keep the material of objectivism alive in your mind? So last week, a big perk of working for ARI is that I have great coaches, and my coach is Don Watkins. And I asked him, you know what? How do I retain stuff in my mind on objectivism? And he said what he used to do is that every now and then, actually almost every day, he would read an essay. Not reading the type of, keep notes, just every day consume some material. Yesterday, I reread The Age of Envy. Within 4 pages, I came up with like 3 ideas. One gave a Twitter thread that was actually quite popular. So how is your system? What is your system in retaining objectivism in your mind, both when you started and now?
When I started, I was a teenager reading Ayn Rand's novels, like a lot of people who are get into Ayn Rand. I guess I was a classic teenager who was, and I'd already gotten to the point where I agreed with some of the more controversial things that prevent people from easily accepting objectivism. I was an atheist. I was a fierce believer in the free market, insofar as I understood it. Not a very consistent one, but at least I believed that the free market and individual effort and individualism in general, I was sympathetic to. So some of the more controversial ideas I already was friendly to, let me put it that way. And when I first read the novels, I thought I had grasped it. I thought I had some kind of mystical epiphany, and here I had the ultimate truth already under my belt. What had to happen for me was to get smacked about in the head a little bit about how much there was that I missed or that I misunderstood about Ayn Rand. And that really didn't occur until I moved to New York. What was I, 17, 18 when I moved to New York? And I started interacting with some real objectivist intellectuals. I began to take Leonard Peikoff courses, sitting around those tape recorders in people's private apartments in New York City, getting to know objectivists. And I realized, my God, there is so much depth here. And it is far more important and far more complex than I possibly could have imagined, and that my understanding was completely insufficient. So I had to circle around. I read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead again and again, and when I found the nonfiction, you're absolutely right about one thing. It is a very healthy exercise to get into. And that's why those discussions that you mentioned earlier that I had with Alejandro about Ayn Rand's essays were so comfortable for me, because that is what Don says is actually become a part of my life. And for the last 30 years, I will read an essay by Ayn Rand or Leonard Peikoff once a week at least. And sometimes I have a very specific purpose in mind. There's a problem I'm working on, an issue I'm working on, and I know that's going to give me important material. Sometimes it really is just for pleasure, and I'm sort of randomly, let's read that because that looks like fun. Or I have my own favorites, and I'll return to my own. And I admit there's not necessarily anything logically hierarchical about it, but there are certain essays by Ayn Rand or speeches by Leonard Peikoff that are absolute favorites of mine that I will return to again and again. But I always have that experience that you described. I'll be reading something that I've read a dozen times already, and I'm 2 pages in and I'm having a new revelation. I'm going around on that spiral, and suddenly I'm having a new integration, a new insight, a new application, a new understanding of it. And so, yeah, it's constant reading, constantly actively working on, for example, working here with the Ayn Rand Center UK, if there's some issue of the day that someone wants to talk about, if I'm going to talk with Mark Pellegrino or with you or with Jonathan about something, I'll bone up on the issue. It's within the news, but it's a whole new issue and it's a whole new application. And doing that constantly, every news story that I even have some slight fuzziness about, that I have some doubt about how objectivism applies. And there might be objectivists who disagree with how I'm applying it, but nonetheless, I have to return to the basic ideas and make sure I have that basic idea thoroughly integrated. I put it in my own words too. I think one of the most important ways to really integrate it, to build it into yourself, to automatize an idea, is to translate it into your own words. Don't use Ayn Rand's language. Use your language. Now, there's a danger to that because Ayn Rand is so precise. Philosophy does require a degree of precision and expertise. So you really have to know what you're doing, or at least know, look, this is my sloppy term for this. This is how I hold it. And sometimes I would do this in Leonard Peikoff's living room. I would put it in my own, Leonard would say, put it in your own words. And I'd put it in my own words, and he'd say, yes, if that's how you hold it, if that's how you retain it conceptually. And that's the trick. We have to find our own way of retaining it and integrating it to the total of our own knowledge. And that requires we put it in our own language and words we understand, and integrate it with all the other things that we know, even if they weren't topics raised by Ayn Rand or Leonard Peikoff. It's that ongoing, and it's an ongoing, never-ending process. And staying frosty like that keeps it right there.
So before we go back to Razi, going back to the content is not like a religious thing, like, oh, I'm sinful if I don't do it. No, particularly for us who need to create content or to interpret stuff, it's a tool. It's a tool that makes our work easier, and it makes our work more precise and more helpful. Okay, Razi, what's the situation with the big announcement?
So this is not the big announcement. The big announcement was the Daily Collective. Yeah.
Okay. The second.
This is a big announcement of its own right, because it's something huge, but it does require people who want to participate to be platinum members or higher at.
How much is platinum?
Platinum is £50 a month. So it is not, as I mentioned, it's not a cheap membership, but we're, making it cheaper by adding stuff to it that is worth, I'm reading Alex Hamosi, what's his name? The 100 million offers. And he says there are two ways of selling. The one is sell cheaper than everyone else. The other is sell something which is unique. So you don't compete based on price. I'm usually the party pooper when Razi announced that. I'm like, oh, dude, okay, that's not. This time, it's really unique. To my knowledge, what Razi will offer, I haven't heard it being done, not only anywhere in Objectives, I haven't seen it done anywhere in any intellectual think tank, movement, organization, institution. So, Razi, what's... Yeah, and I agree with you on pricing, by the way. If I walk by a steakhouse and it says, ribeye for $3.99, I'm not going to get it just because of the price. It tells me something about, where it came from and what's been put into it. But anyway, we have James Valiant here. We've had him on the channel from... as we mentioned, from back in November 2020. James is a former prosecutor, and we had actually an episode a week ago today. We had an episode of Legal AMA, and people were really into that, and that tells you something. So we also have a member of ARCUK here in London who participates in meetups and events, who is a criminal defense attorney. And there are many things, legal and non-legal in the culture that I think would benefit from a trial. So as a benefit of platinum membership, another benefit starting later this month, we will have mock trials. Again, they're only mock trials until we have any actual legal say. We're going to cover things from actual trials to interesting things in the culture, to Nikos's idea. I'll let you say what your idea was. Do you want to say it?
Yes. So my idea is trials that would all die to be there when they happened. So, for example, how would you feel if you were in the courtroom during the trial of Howard Rourke? Now, this trial is in the book, but what if we could relive that trial? Or what would happen if Dagny, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Atlas Shrugged, spoiler alert. You remember that scene where Dagny shoots a guard? What would happen if after the strikers go back to civilization and there's a free society? What if there was a trial about that? Or what if there was a trial about the action of Ragnar Danneskjöld? So this is nothing like, we want to get in the shoes of Ayn Rand. No, we want to see how would the right or wrong, how is it discussed in a court of law? So this is both in terms of, it's interesting for us because these are instances that are familiar to us and it's fun because we are nerds for this material, but also we see two experts in action. So in the university, for example, we had games about, not games, I don't remember, simulation of the Cuba Missile Crisis. And I was really, it was my favorite time at the university. By the way, the first year when I did it, I was Khrushchev and we destroyed the Americans. And in the second year, in the last year, I was coaching the Soviet team. Again, we destroyed the Americans. The information you didn't need to know in today's daily objective. But what I'm saying, these things are good fun. And you will get the chance to see these trials. Also, we can redo famous trials of the past. I don't know, like maybe cases like OJ or something like that. So see them play in front of us. And again, it's an interesting exercise in thinking. Like, who is persuading me better? Is what they're bringing here facts? Is this something which is important? So think about it as something which has entertainment value, but also as something which has thinking and seeing thinking beings in action value. So this is the new feature that will be available for members, if I understood well, Platinum and up. What is above Platinum, by the way?
What was the question?
What is above Platinum member?
Reardon Medal, which is £100 a month, and Midas Mulligan, which is £500 a month.
Okay, these are cool names, first of all. Yeah.
Yes, and of course, if you are at those levels, you get.
What a great opportunity to argue out and to hear two objectivist, sympathetic lawyers arguing out issues like this, reenacting famous trials, reenacting moments as a trial from great literature, including Ayn Rand's, discussing not just legal issues or political issues, but even say we could all go all the way to the issue that got me here on board, an issue like, is there intelligent life in outer space, or is there life in outer space or something? Is that arbitrary? Is it possible? Or how probable is it? We could argue this out. Western philosophy began with the Socratic method, really. And it was a discussion, a dialogue. And there's something powerful about hearing a dialogue, a discussion, an argument, and hopefully it won't be the one-sided, dialogues where Socrates always wins because the poor person hadn't really thought through the meaning of his words. He's going to get burned by Socrates with some contradiction at the end. If you have two people who are really bringing a good case, as best a case as they can on either side, I think there's a value just for the listener to stimulate their own thinking, to consider and weigh the different subjects, the different issues on it. We as objectivists have a very unique, distinct perspective. It is not left, it is not right. It's not nationalist, traditionalist, religious conservatism. It's not progressive socialist leftism either. We have a very distinct perspective, and not just on politics, obviously. That kind of cutting through dichotomies is what we objectivists do. We have a very unique perspective. But that doesn't mean that we can't tease. In fact, the best way to tease out that unique perspective is to hear two different sides and the uniqueness of objectivism's approach. So I'm very excited to be a part of this.
Yeah,
and I will be the judge. And for example, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if in the mock trial of Howard Rourke for dynamite in Cortland, I wouldn't be surprised if James makes a case where I'll say, sorry, Rourke, I'll be as lenient as possible, but hey, I have to,
Yeah, and we don't want to just tell people, this is gonna be great. If you want to see it, pay £50 and then you'll see it. We will give you an actual taste, and we'll give you a taste with the trial of the century. I mean, this is somebody that many people would like to see behind bars or worse.
The trial of the month. Let's keep the expectations reasonable.
Depends on who you ask. And Judge Nikos will read out the charges now. So yeah, let's go.
Okay, so first of all, let me say a big thank you to Roland, who is still, his mind is still working on this big question on the on the extraterrestrial life and whether it's arbitrary or possible or probable. To Jonathan, to Christopher, generous contribution, and to Planet Pellegrino with a very generous contribution. And also, let me say also a big thank you to Planet Pellegrino, to people behind it for the promotion they give us on Twitter. We really, really appreciate it. Okay, so today someone will be put on trial so that you get a taste. And this person is facing charges for the following things. The accused is put on trial for being superfluous, for doing something that it's claimed that we don't really need it because so many other people are doing it. He's put on trial for being presumptuous, which means he claims to be someone he's not. And also, he's put on trial for being over-judgmental and for always accusing others as not being correct, perfect, proper, and as not being as correct as they are. So someone is put on trial for perhaps thinking that he's better than the rest of us, and as someone who thinks he can educate us. So, without further ado, let the accused proceed on stage.
Hang on. Can I call my attorney?
You're going to need one here, sir.
Well, I have an actual real life criminal defense attorney, and as we mentioned, he will be in the trials from now on. So Matthew Humphreys is joining us here.
So here we have the defense, and the accused is Razi Ginsburg. So can the prosecution proceed with the case against Mr. Ginsburg?
Yes, Malad, the Crown has a really solid case against this individual, Razi Ginsburg. I mean, he may appear to be friendly and accessible and a nice guy. And in many ways, I'm sure he is. But as we as objectivists know, the kind of accusations that you just issued, the kind of self-centered egotism, the kind of confidence in one's own individual judgment is a crime of the highest order. I think it goes without saying, it's almost axiomatic that it is a crime of the highest order. But even setting that aside, let's put on our objectivist hats here for a moment. Razi, you really are arrogant, and you really are doing something that others have been doing, and others have been doing so well for a long time. Let's begin here. Ayn Rand is very frequently, we'll hear people say, I read Atlas Shrugged, but Ayn Rand only gave voice to what I'd already believed. It's obvious, it's self-evident. I'd already believed this objectivism thing. Ayn Rand was just stating what was obvious. Now, as objectivists, of course, we know that philosophy is complex. It's a real specialty. It isn't obvious. And the things that Ayn Rand said are unprecedented in the history of thought, many of them completely unprecedented. So it is not something that one can easily state, for example, on the back of a matchbook cover or anything. It's something that requires real expertise. There's no question. And let me add more to that. Ayn Rand from the beginning has been misrepresented and misunderstood in the grossest ways possible. When Atlas Shrugged came out, the leading conservative magazine in this country declared her to be a forthright materialist. And for example, and misrepresentations of that kind are common. And even to this day, I mean, so here we are 60 years later, and people are still misrepresenting Ayn Rand. And it's much worse than even that. We have former associates of Ayn Rand, people who knew or studied with Ayn Rand, people like Murray Rothbard, who became an anarchist, or Nathaniel Branden, who went off the subjectivist deep end as a psychologist, or David Kelly starting a whole new organization. Now, these are people who were associated with Ayn Rand at one time or another, and they misrepresent objectivism. So this is really a subject that requires expertise, that should not be allowed, amateurs should not be allowed to just engage in, their casual bull sessions with. This is something that needs to be taken seriously. If we're not doing it right, the danger of doing it wrong, of course, has enormous consequence. To the extent you believe objectivism is true and is the future of civilization, if there is to be a future of civilization, getting this wrong could have enormously negative consequences. So some moderated bull session that gives people a wrong impression of objectivism, however popular it is, might actually be counterproductive to our aims. I would just further note that the folks at the Ayn Rand Institute are full-time professionals. I encourage anyone to go to the website of ARI, and there you'll see that the affiliates and associates are people with academic credentials like Professor Tara Smith, Robert Mayhew, Edwin Locke, some leading academics with some real, professional background and training in philosophy and psychology. You look at the associates like Harry Binswanger and Peter Schwartz, the Ayn Rand Institute. These people worked closely with Ayn Rand herself when she was alive. Shouldn't we really leave the advocacy of objectivism to full-time professionals who are professionally trained and who know what they're doing? People like this. I mean, as you've admitted earlier in this very program, that you guys are constantly disagreeing. You guys are constantly having arguments over these things, giving people the impression that objectivism, is consistent with Lord knows what contradictions out there. This might be true. This might not be true. And here you're presenting it in such a way that and worst of all, you'd use the Ayn Rand Center. You're giving Ayn Rand's, in effect, imprimatur to what we're doing here. And we're kind of stealing the authority, in effect, of Ayn Rand by using her name. And if I could just quote from Ayn Rand herself, in 1968, Ayn Rand published in her own magazine, The Objectivist, she said, "I will not establish or endorse any type of school or organization purporting to represent, to be, or spokesman for objectivism. I shall repudiate and take the appropriate action against any attempt to use my name, my philosophy, explicitly or implicitly in connection with any project of that kind or any organization not authorized by me." And obviously, Ayn Rand is no longer around to authorize such an organization or the use of her name. Furthermore, there have been people who've said that Ayn Rand Institute itself is a violation of what Ayn Rand herself says. But at least the Ayn Rand Institute was founded by Ayn Rand's own heir, Dr. Leonard Peikoff. Ayn Rand, obviously, she endorsed him as the first objectivist philosopher other than herself. She made him the heir of her estate. So at least he had some authority when he founded the Ayn Rand Institute, some 40 years ago. And all of this is lacking in what we do. You fully admit that we're constantly having disagreements here. You fully admit that, in effect, this is an amateur sort of discussion that we're engaged in on objectivism, and the dangers of being inaccurate or giving a bad impression of objectivism are certainly real, and we're certainly living in a world in which Ayn Rand and objectivism are grossly misrepresented. The dangers here, I think, are real, and although I think your heart is in the right place, Mr. Ginsburg, I think there's no question that the record has shown degree of arrogance and egoism on your part that, well, let people judge for themselves. Your heart may be certainly everyone who knows you to be a nice, friendly chap. And, who could object to someone starting I mean, hey, there you are in a London pub with a meetup group of, just friendly people sharing a pint with one another, discuss, having a moderated BS session in effect. But how much value can we really get from moderated BS sessions? Honestly, sir. So I think the evidence. I think the evidence is overwhelming and beyond a reasonable doubt. Razi Ginsburg is guilty as charged.
We have heard the case against Razi Ginsburg and ARCUK. Now we will hear from the defense. The floor is yours.
Your Honor, I will call Mr. Ginsburg to give evidence. Well, Mr. Ginsburg, just for the purposes of the court, can you confirm whether you are in fact affiliated with an organisation known as ARCUK?
Yes, I founded the organization and I run it.
How would you describe that organization's purpose?
Its purpose is to promote Ayn Rand's ideas and her work. So if you ask me, ultimately what I want to achieve is to get people to read Ayn Rand.
There was a criticism a few minutes ago that you're, in a sense, an amateur, not a professional philosopher. To what extent would you say you are familiar with the ideas of Ayn Rand?
So I would say I am an amateur and that I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a professional intellectual. I think I'm, as somebody who's not an intellectual, very familiar with her ideas. I've been studying them for over 20 years. But I actually think that accusation kind of made my case for me, if I can say that. I think, what I do is I attempt to bring people to the point where they read Ayn Rand, and hopefully further down the line, they will actually go to the professional intellectuals who I admire and, encourage people to listen to.
Would you say that your organization offers anything distinctive?
Yes, I think I'm probably gonna sound as arrogant as I was accused of being, but I think we we're offering something unprecedented in that, I first attended the Objectivist Summer Conference that the Ayn Rand Institute runs every year. I first attended it in 2017, and it was one of the best weeks of my life up to that point. It was amazing. You get to hear all these great thinkers and great speakers, and I thought, I wish I could have this every day. And I think we have done more to bring it to that point where it's not OCON level, because people prepare for an OCON talk for a year sometimes, but it is many of the speakers who you see at OCON, many of the intellectuals who were named, many of ARI's intellectuals have been guests on our channel, have had shows on our channel. Harry Binswanger has a weekly show. Onkar Ghate had a show where he was on pretty much every week. So yes, I'm very proud of the fact that we are offering something unprecedented and unique.
The prosecution a few moments ago cited the fact that there is another organization, the Ayn Rand Institute, with professional philosophers involved. You've answered this to some extent already, but just to be completely clear, how would you describe relations between your organization and the ARI?
So we're friendly organizations. We are supported. Much of our support comes from the Ayn Rand Institute. And again, as I mentioned, we work together. Some of their best minds appear on this channel regularly, and hopefully will continue to do that, and hopefully will appear more regularly as we grow programming. And yes, as I mentioned, my goal is to bring people into objectivism. It is not to teach the next generation of intellectuals. We do not have that capacity. And if we identify people who might be the next generation of intellectuals, we will send them to the Ayn Rand Institute. And I think some future major names in the movement have come from us.
That's been referred to that there are a number of other organizations claiming to promote the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Would you agree that you and your organization have at times critiqued those other organizations?
I mean, we've critiqued some of them. I think some organizations I'm a big fan of, they operate locally, they operate in a different way. I mean, Ayn Rand Center Israel is an organization I'm a big fan of. I'm originally from Israel, so I can also, consume their content in the native language, and I'm a fan. There are other organizations that I'm not a fan of, and we have critiqued one particular organization twice. Like 2 of the over 2,000 videos on our channel have been about that organization. So I think 0.1% of our content being on that topic is just the right amount.
Would you consider it fair to say that either yourself or ARCUK are, and I quote the charges, presumptuous or superfluous?
No, I don't think so. I mean, definitely not superfluous, because again, what we have created is unprecedented, and has brought people into objectivism, has brought serious students into objectivism. I think certainly more than some organizations that claim to be objectivist and spend a lot more money than we do. So no, I think our work is vital and should be supported and celebrated.
Would you accept, and again, I'm quoting the charges that were sent to me, that you can at times be judgmental?
Yes, I think. Well, I think judgmental is a problematic word. I think I attempt to judge people morally for better or worse. I hopefully do that in a just way, but I think judgment is something that's moral judgment is crucial to dealing with other people. And I think when I judge people negatively, I stand behind that. I can think of very few cases where I was wrong on when judging somebody negatively, to the point where I say, this person is beyond the pale, which is I don't think it's that frequent, but it happens.
Would you say that your, for want of a better term, judgmentalism is reasonable and appropriate in the circumstances in which you exercise it?
Yes, I mean, I think yeah, there are cases where it's necessary, and then in that case, yes, I think I've been just.
I don't have any further questions. My learned friend, the prosecutor, may have some questions for you at this point.
Yes, permission to cross-examine. The Crown does have a couple of questions.
Permission granted, only couple of questions. This procedure has gone for longer than anticipated. Please proceed.
Well, you admit then that you have guests on who will state their own opinion, and that opinion may or may not be consistent with what Ayn Rand's opinion is, or was.
Of course.
Sorry, what was the question?
You have, isn't that true, Mr. Ginsburg, that you'll have guests on that will express opinions that Ayn Rand herself did not express, and may be different from opinions that Ayn Rand herself expressed?
Of course. I mean, we started this show with a discussion of a documentary that aired for the first time nearly 40 years after Miss Rand's death. So she had no opinion of that documentary. Two people who agree with Rand's philosophy spoke about that documentary and had different views. So certainly, if she were around, at least one of us would, she would disagree with at least one of us. But at no point do we claim, everything you hear on this channel is the views of Ayn Rand. When we do claim something is the view of Ayn Rand, we will quote her. That is the extent of Ayn Rand's view that you will hear on this channel.
I only have one final question then. You by your own admission then, the Ayn Rand Center UK will be on a regular basis expressing opinions that Ayn Rand herself would have disagreed with.
Well, I don't know if she would disagree with it. That's the thing about
if there's two people having a disagreement. Ayn Rand was famous for believing that A is A and contradictions don't exist. And presumably, if two people disagree, such as you and Nikos, for example, is the example you yourself used, one of you would have been, Ayn Rand would have disagreed with at least one of you. Is that not so? And wouldn't that not be true of every case in which you've hosted a debate or a disagreement?
Oh, yeah. And that's why I think we are, I think this is a big part of how we serve the purpose for which the organization exists, which is to get people interested in Rand's ideas by, listening to people informed by her philosophy, talk about topics that might be of interest to them, hear views that they've never heard before on these topics, and hopefully decide to follow up and go to the source itself of the philosophical thinking. Is that a gun?
So you're comfortable routinely spreading ideas that Ayn Rand would have disagreed with?
Sorry, I missed that.
So you're comfortable routinely spreading...
Excuse me, Mr. Prosecutor, you had two questions. You've already asked three. Any final words from the defense?
Just briefly, if I may. The prosecution are bringing the case. The burden is on the prosecution to satisfy you beyond reasonable doubt of that case. I submit they have not done so. Mr. Ginsburg has emphatically denied being either pretentious or superfluous. And while he accepts that he is sometimes judgmental, he has explained that he practices this in accordance with the philosophy of objectivism. The prosecution criticized his organization on the basis that they are not a professional organization such as the Ayn Rand Institute. You've heard Mr. Ginsburg explain that his organization, in fact, has a close relationship with the Ayn Rand Institute, and that a number of their professional philosophers do produce content for his organization here in the UK. In terms of sometimes allowing on contradictory views and contradictory speakers, you may recall at the time of the last US presidential election, two very prominent objectivists, Dr. Leonard Peikoff and Mr. Yaron Brook, disagreed on the appropriate candidate to support for president. What Ayn Rand would have thought, we don't know because she's long dead, but it's not unusual or uncommon within objectivism to have differences of opinion on specific real-world issues as opposed to philosophical fundamentals. So I would submit that both of those criticisms are null and void, and I would ask you to find Mr. Ginsburg not guilty.
Here is the court's verdict. First of all, does the defense has anything else to add? Mr. Ginsburg?
Do I have anything? Oh no, I'm happy with what my attorney said.
So here's the court's verdict. The public prosecutor made a very solid case that if someone would indeed misrepresent Miss Rand, claiming to be an authority when they were not, they should be thrown to the intellectual dungeons and the keys should be thrown to a lake. Yet, it seems to me that the defense managed to address both three categories. The first category was that ARCUK is superfluous. And yet it seems to me that the defense made a solid case that what ARCUK offers is different from anything out there and from the 5 million other podcasts that are at the moment available on the internet. The second argument was that ARCUK is presumptuous, which means it presents itself as something which is not. Again, I think the defense made a clear case that ARCUK presents itself as students of objectivism, and therefore it is not presumptuous. On the third accusation of being too judgmental, I think the defense has made the case that yes, indeed, they are judgmental, but this is within the parameters of judgmentalism being a virtue rather than a vice. Therefore, the court declares Mr. Ginsburg and ARCUK clear of all three categories. Case closed.
We will be filing a notice of appeal, my lord. No, I've never been so happy to lose a case.
So, gentlemen, this was a on-the-spot mock trial, but the trials that will be available to the members, to the platinum members of ARCUK, will be trials where sometimes are going to be real cases or quote reals from fiction. And again, this is not fan fiction, or this is not an alternative reality. This is an exercise in thought. You see some good minds in action, and you see some good minds using logic and argumentation in real life. So, Razi, the last word should be yours. You are the reason we are here. You're the reason we've been here for 3 years. So let's acknowledge, first of all, the super chats. Many thanks to Ginger, who says debate is a healthy way to understand the other point of view. I agree, Ginger. I had the same revelation when I was thinking about what is a woman. Marilyn sends appreciation for Matthew and of for his wonderful accent. Many thanks to Jonathan. And Marilyn, again, a big thank you. You've been an integral part of us for these last 3 years with your support, moral and material. And Marilyn says, Miss Rand didn't want dogmatic parrots. She wanted people to think, ask questions, and understand. And what a better way to finish off today's episode. And let's have Razi give the last word, because he deserves it.
Yeah, so thanks again for everybody who has been on the channel, has made this this show possible for 3 years, for all our supporters, our viewers. I hope it was worth it, and I hope you will continue to support us and continue to watch. There's going to be, as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot more content, so there's going to be a lot more to watch. But hopefully, we will earn your support and your time with future shows that are coming up. Thanks again, everyone, and we will see you again tomorrow with the first episode of the 4th year of the Daily Objective. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to our viewers. See you.